What is up, Fantasyland? We are missing our fearless leader, JD, tonight due to some unavoidable technical issues, but we do have a fun show planned. We've got Andrew Schellenberg making I have to at this point call it a guest appearance. And is this in fact a La Quinta that I'm seeing behind you, the buffet room?
That's right. That's right.
Okay.
I'm doing it live from the living room of La Quinta. That's right.
The joke that never gets old. And our guest of honor tonight, other than Andrew, of course, who's always a guest of honor, but our real guest of honor is Darren Armani, Fantasy Mojo, and he has one of the best sites if you're into the FFPC, if you're into lots of other stuff. I mean, there's just so much goodness on there. I'm going to let you talk about it in just a minute, Darren, but it's one of my best bargains of any fantasy years when I sign up for the Fantasy Mojo site. So Good stuff there. Let's do our intro here and then pop right into the show.
DiSTRiCT, you know the Pope listens. Dynasty, our religion, for the blokes missing. On all of these trades, on all of these plays, on all of these grades. By the end of the day, y'all getting played. So, what you gonna do next? Try to fill up that flex? Send the homie a text? That trash offer's the best? You try to make it complex, then they text you back. Now all of a sudden they don't make any sense. Broaden your horizons, boy. Dynasty's not for the Simons, boy. These trades not for consignment, boy. Respect your opponent, y'all some piranhas, boy. This my advice from me to you. Open up your cute little podcast queue. Search up GOAT DiSTRiCT, my dude. Pop it in your ear, man. Y'all know what to do. It's the and I always be traded. And I always be traded. And I always be trading. Y'all try to betray them, but first you gotta bait them. Fish.
All right, welcome back, everybody. And just real quick, a couple of housekeeping things. You know what? If you like the show, go ahead and hit that like button. Everybody likes to be liked, right? It's just natural. It's part of the human condition. So you know what? I'm promising you this. You like us, we'll like you right back. We won't have a button to do it, but we're going to like you all the same. So just go ahead and like us. Go ahead and share us, too, if you can do that. That's fantastic. If you can review us and say nice things, even better. So thanks for coming on tonight and joining us. And first and foremost, I'm going to let Darren talk a little bit about the Fantasy Mojo site, all the tools that he's got there, and just anything that he wants to say about it.
Yeah, so if you're playing FFPC, which I think is going to be a topic of a lot of what we go over tonight, it's a go-to site for that. During draft season, we've got ADP, we got the draft boards, we got tools to help you navigate player ownerships throughout the tournament. This time of year, we get into some, I call it the championship sprint content. And what we'll do is we'll look at the ownership of players that are contained within the main event or the Fantasy Pros tournament, see what the player ownerships are. We've got a really cool Stack Explorer tool that will also let you click on any it's like you want to know any combination of players, like how many teams have Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes, how many teams have Goff, Amon-Ra, Laporta. You can go into this thing, it'll pop up the teams that own them, and it'll show you the player ranks too. So it's a very good tool for determining leverage within the pool. So say you're like, you're currently positioned, 400th in the leaderboard, and you want to know, okay, how many, if you have, for instance, like, Jerick McKinnon, and you want to know how many other teams have Jerick McKinnon. Well, you can see within this tool, like all the teams that have Jerick McKinnon and where they're ranked. So you might, the things like that. If you've watch the Go Bills guys who won last year. Seen them on some podcasts. I think the FFPC interviewed them a couple of times. They specifically call out these tools as helping them win the tournaments in the past. So something to keep in mind. But and then coming up is the playoff challenge for the FFPC. We have tons of content for that. Strategies, ownerships within the tournament, and a lot of stuff. It's very simple. You just go to the homepage. There's a virtual tour site. You hit that, and it walks you through everything that we have. But if you've invested thousands of dollars into main event teams or fantasy pros teams, you really it shouldn't be that much of a leap to spend a few bucks more and get the advanced metrics on a lot of the information that's going on with these tournaments.
Mojo, go ahead, Dan.
No, go ahead.
Mojo, the other benefit too, you're more than welcome to take this as like a tagline. But if anybody's working on their resume out there and needs to, bolster it, switching jobs, whatever it is, allow Mojo's site to work for you too. In the age of data analysis and data visualization, it used to be you put on your resume, hey, I'm proficient in Excel, and that means you can hit the equal sign before you do a formula. Well, look, if you work on Mojo's site, you can now say proficiency in Tableau. You're a data visualist artist if you're able to navigate Mojo's site. Data
analytics and visualizations, creating dashboards to propel you to success.
There you go. Say now you're on your resume, bolster it and say, hey, I subscribe to Mojo's site. I'm proficient in Excel and Tableau.
Whatever works.
Exactly.
As long as you're winning at the end of the year.
That's right.
That's the main thing. And yeah, I mean, it's fantastic information. I use it literally all year long. The playoffs are coming up, and you'll have the playoff challenge stuff up there. We're using it right now for the championship sprint. During draft season, it's the most valuable tool I know of during draft season. And I do a lot of drafts, and it's just nice to know what's going on ADP-wise, what's the trends, everything else. So it's all there. And so make sure you're checking that out if you haven't. And also, Darren, you had something you wanted to share with us on the screen, too. I don't know if you have that ready to go or not, but
so we're talking about the championship sprint in the FFPC right now for the main event and the Fantasy Pros tourney. So those sprints kick off this week, so weeks 15, 16, and 17. And one of the questions that I get a lot is, what are my chances of winning the tournament based upon where I'm initially seated? Because when you begin the tournament, there's in the main event, there's 830 teams. In the Fantasy Pros tournament, I think there's 3,400. But you're initially seeded based upon your average points scored during the regular season. So, like Dan is number one in the NFFC contest, so you're going to be seeded number one before the tournament starts. But if you sort of slid in there, then you're going to be way down the leaderboard to begin. So the question is, how am I going to like ascend 800 spots, 1,000 spots to win this thing? And people don't really have a sense for that starting point. So I'm going to share something that I came up with. This is a Joe DiSTRiCT exclusive for you guys. I did it just for you. I didn't do this in Tableau. All right, I just did this in Excel. So
Well, I'm very disappointed.
Let's see here. Here we go. Window. All right. Is it showing up for you?
Yes. Here we go. Let me change up our overlay here. Nope. That's not great, but maybe that'll work. Okay. That'll work.
All right. So what I have here are the top 10 finishers last year in the main event and formerly known as the Football Guys tournament last year. So we have the top 10 finishers. That's the first column. That was their final rank. The second column is their start rank. Where were they at when that 3-week sprint started? So the guys in first, the Go Bills guys, this team was named Marv Levy 6. They were ranked 156. That's where they started. So they did a little bit of work, and they worked their way up the board. Now look down at the Football Guys tournament. The team that ended up in first started with 1,361. So that should really give you some hope, even if you're buried at the beginning, that you can, do what it takes to get to the top. And over in the right-hand column, that 3-week point total, the second from the right, that shows you what their score was over those 3 weeks. So they had to outscore the next team by like 33 points to leap that far. But this gives you a sense of, can I win based upon where I'm seated? So, for instance, my main event team is, I think I'm seated 580 to start.
Out of 800, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But I see two guys who at least finished in the top 10 last year in the main event that started in that area, 591 and 602. So, you're going to have to hit on everything, but you can do it. So, and that's what I just wanted to show, because people have never really seen this before. So now that you actually have some hardcore data around what you can do based upon when you're seated.
I love it, and one of the main reasons I love it is I have a team in 795th place in the championship sprint for the main. So I look at it this way: I'm only like 35 places out of very last place. So if I can win it with that, then that will really be a feather in my cap.
And Darren, maybe you stopped sharing, but if you didn't, Dan, can you share that screen again or no?
Oh, I have it. I'll put it back up for you.
Do you mind? Because I was actually looking at it too, and one way to improve, and we'll figure out on the fly here is I think looking at your data, the bands were tighter last year. Would be interested in seeing that. I was looking at it this year, Dan, because I was in the main. I was like 300 something, and the first place team is already 22 points ahead of me. To Darren's point, as he shows the graph, you have to catch not only catch the number one team, keep all the other teams at bay, but then they're starting with their weekly average from the first 12 weeks.
Yeah,
first 12 weeks of the season,
yep.
Right? That they start over with. So and again, I'm going to use these numbers as like rough proxies. So again, I was looking between the first team and the 300 something team. But if you just look at Lou and Brew Maine there, they started with 158, right? Last year, the 602 team right above them was 138. So that's a 20-point difference. So it already feels like perhaps there's more ground to catch up this year in the main. And again, a little bit anecdotal. I wonder how much of that is sticky year over year. But just something to consider. One, Darren, for your own Excel proficiency, is considering kind of where the average start was. Where the total start was. Who were they chasing at number one, and kind of how that compares to this year. It's like,
right.
A 20-point gap last year that had been between making up 1 and 605, but this year 20-point gap is between 1 and 200. I don't know what the right answer is, but just interesting in terms of the spreads year over year. But I love this chart, Darren. This is awesome.
Yeah, this is the first year that I did this, so I don't have any history back before that. But see, the problem is the leaderboards disappear off the websites, right?
Not good.
And then you're like, I don't even remember like how this. So I have to go in and actually set reminders to save this stuff.
Yep. No. Anyways, no. This is great. I just wanted to make sure I got the numbers right in terms of the spreads I was seeing this year. So I think that a 20-point gap maybe goes a little bit further this year than it did last year.
Yeah, and the thing is to keep in mind also, that 20-point gap, you've got 3 weeks to make it up.
That's right.
Even if it's a 30-point gap, you've just got to be 10 points better than that team, all 3 weeks instead of thinking about, we've got 30 points to make up. You can have one player really go off and you can make up, like 80% of that just in one shot. So.
Absolutely, it's a real shame in the football guys last year there wasn't somebody from like the top 10, so we could benchmark just how many points that 1361 came up, or how many points they had to make up. I mean, it's very very, very clearly at least only like 14 points between 65 and 1361. So pretty tight band there in terms of being able to make that up, as you said, Dan, over 3 weeks.
Yes, definitely. All right, and before we get into the rest of the show, we are going to pay a bill here, and normally JD would do his little Batman sounder, which I do not have access to.
Da-da-da-da.
But I'm supposed to do something, to to let them know where the break is. So there it is.
Hey, so many ask me, what's wrong with sports books? Why so many of them fail? The answer is simple. They don't innovate. They're just casino sports books on a phone. That's all they've been. There are a few that are doing a good job. We partner with them. Most of them, not so much. Until Bet Openly came along. Bet Openly said, hey, we're going to innovate. We're going to do something groundbreaking. We're going to have peer-to-peer betting in all states, and you pay 1%. When you win, you pay just 1% on your winnings. You heard that right. It's 1%. With code Underworld, you qualify for just that 1% transaction fee on Bet Openly. It gives you ultimate flexibility to set your own lines and browse lines that others have set. Think about it. That's what betting should be. And now that is the reality. BetOpenly.com. The code is Underworld. Check it out.
All right. And we are back. Okay. So I thought for today we'd just kind of go through a couple of the hot topics, that are foremost on people's minds. And then talk a little bit about the championship sprint. And, this kind of delves into playoffs in general, too. So if you're not necessarily doing FFPC, a lot of this stuff is going to be still relevant for you as well, especially the last topic as we get to the end. So first off, let's talk, Darren, a little bit about Justin Herbert. What a sad state of affairs. Fractures the dreams of so many of his managers and potentially those of the Keenan Allen managers as well. And, with that fractured finger, he's done for the year. Easton stick, insert your hockey joke here. Can he pull a Jake Browning, do you think, and keep targets afloat for all the members of this this offense? Or is this really going to torpedo the Chargers? What do you think about that first, Darren?
I think the targets will be there, but I mean, if you watched him, he's kind of a bit of a cowboy, and he had the fumbles too. So I don't know that it's going to be, I guess the question for people is this somebody I should start, right? Mm-hmm. And I don't know that at least the first week out there that you're going to have any sort of confidence that he's a startable asset. Now, you saw Keenan Allen did not practice today. Mm-hmm. So who's he going to be throwing to if Keenan Allen is not playing? So it's going to be Quentin Johnston. It's going to be maybe Josh Palmer comes back, which would be good. I think Josh Palmer is maybe you can envision a scenario where he's one of those low-owned guys in a tournament that if Stick is reliable, then Palmer's some guy who could maybe catapult because he should get a decent amount of targets there. But the Stick himself seems kind of shaky. Like you're going to start him over in the tournament. You first of all, he's not even on any teams. So
I was going to make a point. You're able to confirm that. I mean, we'd be able to figure out real quick if we have a member of his family playing in the main event, because that'd be the only team who probably had him rostered before.
Yeah, so that's kind of a moot point. But maybe if you're in another playoff league, if it's somebody you're thinking about picking up, it's kind of a while. And the landscape is so shoddy right now for quarterbacks. Like, how are you in a position where that's your only option? And maybe it is. I don't know.
That would be bad. I think he might be more of an issue for superflex and two quarterback formats rather than single quarterback. Hopefully you've got something better than that going in single quarterback, though. At the rate quarterbacks have been going down, especially the past 3 weeks, I guess nothing should surprise us. But Darren, what are the stats on the Chargers stacks? We got Keenan Allen is very highly owned, right?
Yeah, I think Keenan Allen is. Let me look at the data here. I think he might have been the second most or the top most guy owned.
Okay.
Overall.
Yeah, it looks like he's top most owned.
Yeah, which is great. I mean, that means he was the number one player to own during the regular season to get you to the championship round. So he won people a lot of leagues. But now the problem is, now that you're in the sprint, he may not even play that first week. And that's gonna hurt you, which is great if you're one of those teams that doesn't have Keenan Allen, because I'd have to see where about in the leaderboard these Allen teams are, and that's one of the things that you can do with the tool, that Stack Explorer. I can go plug in Keenan Allen, and actually I could even do that if you wanted to.
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that.
Increase our Tableau
Yes.
proficiency, Darren.
All right.
Do you want to put it on the screen, or is this just something you'd rather talk through?
No, I'll show it. It's cool how people can.
Okay.
You want to share it, or I'll share it?
Yeah, go ahead and put it up there, and I'll change
right.
our format here to match.
This will be cool. Present screen. All right. So here's the fancy championship round Stack Explorer that I have. So what this has, it's loaded with all the players and all the teams in either the Fantasy Pros or the main event and the championship sprint. So all I'm going to do is click on Keenan Allen. And what it'll do is pop up. I got to uncheck AG Brown. So now I'm seeing all of the teams in the Fantasy Pros tournament that have Keenan Allen. Look, all top 7 teams of Fantasy Pros have Keenan Allen. Look at this. So these guys are in big trouble. These guys are going to sink if this guy doesn't play. So you're getting a feel for, what are my chances week to week? Now let me look at the main event and see how that's looking. 3 out of the top 10 teams. But it's all very top-heavy teams. Cocktails and Dreams with some Keenan Allen. So if you're a Cocktails and Dreams hater, you can root against him. But
we've had him on a little bit here on the Go District, Dan.
Yeah. Yep, we've had him on a time.
Yeah, no, he's the best. But this is funny on the Fantasy Pros. The top 7 teams all have Keenan Allen.
That's really funny.
This is what I'm saying with the leverage. Like, so if you have another player that you could play instead of you probably still want to play Keenan Allen, but if you've got some other player, you can get a sense where you can maybe leapfrog some of these guys if you've got an alternate. It's like maybe you have Josh Palmer,
Yep.
and then maybe you want to play him instead if he ends up, getting the start over Keenan Allen. But this is the type of thing you can do with this.
Yeah, it's great stuff. I mean, it's just so the more you dig in, the more you find out. The more ways you can find out to do, just interesting things to leverage yourself against other teams.
Let's look at Justin Herbert. I want to see, now that I'm in here, I want to see who's stuck with Justin Herbert. Keenan Allen. I got to uncheck Keenan Allen. All right, what do we got here? Teams 2 and 7 and Fantasy Pros have Herbert. And over in the main event, oh no, Cocktails and Dreams had the Allen Herbert stack. Yeah. That's hard times for them. Teams 1 and 2.
Yeah, so. Kind of makes you wonder though if you didn't have a different quarterback to go with them. So and that's something you can do within the FFPC site itself. Is you can go look at that a particular team. You can just mouse over it, click it, and you can see like exactly
hit their roster.
Yeah. See what their roster is, or at least their starters are, so you can get an idea. So especially if you happen to be close in the last week, it's a great thing to do because you can just sit there and see, hey, the people I could catch or the people who could catch me, what do they have available? So
right,
But
that's like every week you're going to be doing that because the rankings are going to change over the 3-week sprint. You're going to be diving in there, seeing what do I need to do to get ahead of the guys ahead of me, and that type of thing. So. But it's like, people are going to have to watch what's going on with Keenan Allen this week. But Easton Stick's more of a wild card.
Darren, will your data refresh after week 1 of the shootout to see the new ranks of everyone?
So every Tuesday morning, I'll go in and update that. So the player pool itself won't change, right? Because you can't add players, but the rankings will be different.
The rankings. Yep. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the Dolphins. I'm curious, Darren. You can be looking up the stats on any Dolphin stacks that you want to bring up, but the Dolphin skill players have kind of gone from confident starts to something pretty shaky over the past couple weeks. the offensive line has been decimated by injuries. Tyreek's gimpy now, and I know it's going to be hard to bench Tyreek if he plays. You saw even in a game where he could barely go at all. He was getting out there for at least as many plays as he could, and he did some damage on some of those too. Raheem Mostert, you're probably going to play him almost no matter what, but do those injuries change how you guys look at like Jalen Waddle, Tua, Achane, anything like that? Andrew, what are your thoughts there?
Got to play him. Mike McDaniel's, too good. I guess my question would be, what other options do you potentially have? See in the chat from old Dr. Evil, right? Potentially leverage on Tua or on Tyreek. I just did my best Louis Riddick impression there. I just don't know what other leverage you'd have in order to play somebody else over him. I don't think that's really what the question is, but I think that if you made this shootout and you have these good options that potentially have shown explosion before, I think for the most part you got to play them. At least that's my opinion.
Yeah.
What about you, Darren?
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to be in a desperate spot. Like, I'm playing all these guys regardless. Like, even if they're questionable, like, you got to plug them in there. Unless, go back to the leverage thing, unless you're so far down, like, that's like, you got to throw this Hail Mary. But then that's like recklessness. You know what I mean? That's like, you're going to sink yourself for the tournament if that doesn't work out for you. It's not like in the playoff challenge where you can play leverage, but you have 40 teams that you could load up the tournament with. You've got one or two. So you have to leverage responsibly at the same time.
That's right.
Always leverage responsibly.
Yeah. So I mean,
that should have been the show title. Man, we missed one there.
Right.
Darren, can I ask a question? I think Herbert and Achane are common players in this question. And I may have missed it. You may have done this before. Whatever happened with that guy who rage quit on like half of his team? I'm pretty sure it was like Herbert, Lamb, Achane.
Oh, he dropped him. I didn't really go back and follow up on that.
Do we know? Okay. That was a great tweet by you.
That was it. That was an intentional, like the guy was just pissed that he lost his playoff game and he just dropped the players.
Rage dropping. Yeah.
Rage quit. I think that guy made the shootout too. Very, very interesting thing. Thanks, Dan, for ordering the agenda to allow me to ask that question. Well done.
Absolutely.
And we've seen him undo drops before, but those were clearly mistakes. Or during the regular season, if somebody drops like that, they'll undo it because you can't put those guys back in the player pool to let somebody else pick them up. But in this case, like the week 11 final drop deadline had been in there, and nobody else could pick them up.
Yeah,
unless the guy thought maybe he could do that too. You don't know. Like I was saying on the Deep End show, like as these tournaments grow, like the players' understanding of the rules, like it's out there. You see guys who don't realize that when you get to $0 with your fab that you can't make moves anymore. They're like, why can't I add a player? Why isn't there first come first serve? Like these are legitimate questions you see in the lobby chat. I'm like, guys, there's a lot of newbies, especially on the Fantasy Pro side.
Yeah. I can't imagine that. And Dan and I chatted about this. You can't imagine Alex had much sympathy for that guy, even if you tried to go back to him and say, "Hey, sorry, didn't know the rules. I had made the shootout, and I'd like all those players back." There's
he might not even known he made the shootout. I mean, I don't know what they're thinking.
Because they did make the shootout, right? I think that was like 1 or 2 seed.
Yeah,
it was really good. Good shit. I think a little bit of tougher question, Darren. Texans. They were looking good. Stroud was looking good. Nico was looking great. We love Tank. Obviously, he's been out a couple weeks now. How are we feeling about the Texans' options, especially with some uncertainty around Stroud's concussion protocol as we enter the tournament? Because if maybe you snuck a Stroud team in there, that'd be great leverage on the field, potentially. How are we feeling about the Texans?
So, C.J. Stroud is the 5th most owned quarterback.
Oh, then never mind. Yeah, okay.
But that seems really bad. If there's no Nico and there's no Tank Dell, right? So you're down to Noah Brown, like
Noah and Brevin.
Brevin, Robert Woods. I mean, plus their schedule's hard. They're at Tennessee, then they play Cleveland, and then Tennessee. So it's not like, what's this guy going to do? I mean, he might. You're probably still going to play him. Like, what better option do you have? But you just really got to sort of minimize your expectations. Like, I don't see, especially with Noah Brown, I saw you had on the sheet. Like, Noah Brown is not. When has he succeeded as the number one? I mean, I don't think that even with the Cowboys that wasn't the case either.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And, Noah Brown has definitely done his best imitation of the peace out guy, and just faded from view over the past couple weeks. So if you're on the Texans stacks, I think it's probably time to pivot. Though unless you're in desperate straits. I mean, we do sometimes see quarterbacks get the job done. If I was going to start anybody out of that mess, I would probably start the running backs. Like maybe Singletary, maybe Stroud if you're in a desperate position. It kind of depends on who else you've got at quarterback. You might be just kind of roped into having to start Stroud. So.
If Schultz comes back, maybe that's a play. Like I can see him having some success with tight end premium. And there's only there's 6 Stroud Schultz stacks. I'm overall, I'm not sure what the Schultz situation is, but I mean maybe he has some luck.
Yeah. So these are things that you want to be doing if you really need to be throwing the Hail Mary. If you're somewhere in the top 50 teams or something like that. These moves might not be for you. Yeah. Is pretty much what it comes down to. So let's go through and any other quarterbacks that you'd like to talk about, Darren, as far as like ownership and stacks that are going on with them. Anything that you found interesting when you were perusing your own data here?
Yeah. When I looked at the ownership, the most owned quarterbacks. I was really surprised that Patrick Mahomes was down to 21. I know he's had an off year, but that seems really, really low. And maybe that's a function of his draft capital. Even though he hasn't been terrible, like given where you drafted him, like those teams haven't been able to sort of overcome the cost. So Mahomes, if you have Mahomes teams, and if he can suddenly turn it on, that's going to be very helpful. And again, I would use the Stack Explorer, plug in Patrick Mahomes and see where these guys are at and see what chance he had. Now, I was a little happy because I was a disciple of the Mahomes Kelsey thesis, and that's the team that I got through in the main event. And there's only 22 of them. But then when I looked in the Stack Explorer, it's like, well, I'm like number 18 out of the 22. I'm like way down. It's like, so what do I got to do to get ahead of these guys? I'm going to have to do some other, smoke and mirrors to do that. Another guy that was really low, Tua, is the 13th most owned quarterback, and Lamar is the 14th. So those guys are down there. Now, they have really high ceilings. So those are the kind of guys that you want to have to maybe get ahead of, Jake Browning is the most owned quarterback, right? So I think there's going to be a lot of shuffling within, that mix of quarterbacks that you can gain some ground.
Yeah, one I thought was really interesting was Pat Mahomes and Rasheed Rice was only there are only 3 with that stack in the tournament on the main side, and only 38 on the Fantasy Pros side. So that's kind of a fun one. I was a little bit surprised to see that. I thought maybe more teams with that stack might have gotten in there, but my guess is probably a lot of people weren't intentionally doing that stack unless they're trying to do, like a whole Kansas City stack or whatever, because Rice was so cheap back in the days when we were drafting so long ago. Yeah,
there were probably tons of Mahomes Tony stacks that have since been eliminated and they got rid of them. But I guess if there was one, like if you looked at, how many were in existence at any one time, it was probably Tony. Stafford is another guy that, Stafford Puka stacks. There's 13 of them. Stafford Cooper Kupp is 4. There's only 4 of those.
Golly, yeah. I like the one that stood out to me when you said it was the Lamar Jackson one. That's interesting.
Yeah, he's most tied to Zay Flowers.
Yeah.
That's the most. But then if you go down to some of the other guys, like they become a little bit more scarce across the tourney. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. There's going to be a lot of movement.
I think a couple other interesting guys. Trevor Lawrence for sure. down at 4.69% on the main.
Mm-hmm.
He's at 5.86% on the Fantasy Pros.
You're very low.
If you really want to get a little bit funky, Joe Flacco 2.64% in the main and 2.07% in Fantasy Pros.
I didn't even bother to look for him. That's an interesting point. Yeah.
Yeah. So some fun stuff like that, and so it's kind of wild to me that everybody jumped all over Jake Browning. He's actually the most owned player in the tournament on either side. It looks like to me, and but yet nobody wanted to do anything with Flacco because he's kind of old news. But hey, he can still sling it. So if you're one of those teams that's way down there and you've got a Flacco. That might be your ticket up towards the top, to pass a lot of other teams. So, fun stuff to take a look at. Any other thoughts on that, Andrew?
Yeah, just nonsense thoughts. I'm looking at it and I see, the ones that make sense are like a Mariota. Like I'm in on that, right? If you have a Hurts team, you might as well. I mean, I think the Jake Browning underscores the point of just having a backup, having a second or potentially third quarterback available to you. The least owned is Trey Lance, but even then, while Wild makes, you could talk yourself out, into it after a couple of hoops. The one that really catches my attention, and I'd love to see how they drafted, I'm gonna have to go and unpack that one, is Anthony Richardson. He made it onto 2 championship football guys teams, and so I just don't know if they're like a Gator fan or a Colts fan. They're like, no, I'm gonna drag him in memoriam. With my championship roster, or this is just like a team that's just unattended to. But I really enjoy looking at that one, the Anthony Richardson one.
Yeah, there's guys who check out. There's 7 Joe Burrow teams. So it's just
that's some in memoriam type shit there.
Yeah, and props to Dr. Evil as the third best Flacco team in the main.
You got 4 Kirk Cousins teams even. Like, I don't know how these guys, they made the sprint. And they just
made it. Yeah.
They thought it was best ball. I don't know what's going on.
Well, they saw the Go Bills guys and everyone else like doing those like championship roster printouts and framing like a jersey in the back. They just wanted to make damn sure that if they won the whole thing, they were able to get their favorite player on that plaque. That's the only way this makes sense.
Yeah.
Is for plaque purposes. Looking ahead. Smart.
Love it. All right. Let's just kind of jump through, talk some of the low-owned running backs that you're seeing, Darren, and which ones look most interesting to you.
I think Eckler is the guy who jumps out because he sank so many teams. And Dan, you and I know this very well, how he can destroy your team if you spend a lot to get him. But some of them, there's 4.69% ownership of Eckler. So a lot of guys were able to sneak through despite his underachieving. And then Bijan's really low too. I mean, he totally destroyed teams. We know that. But now they're looking good. Bijan, Barkley, Eckler.
Barkley. Yep.
Those would be my favorites of among the lower owned running backs.
Yeah, I really like them. I like James Conner as well. Aaron Jones would be interesting if he could ever, play the game of football again. Same with Jonathan Taylor. They're both pretty low owned. Taylor's up at 6.25%, but that's still relatively low compared to the field. So it's some interesting guys there, and I think those are the places where if you've got them, you can hope that you're able to differentiate enough. Because probably the guy, I would guess I haven't looked this up, but I would guess that. Like most of the Eckler teams are probably towards the bottom of the field, at this time. They made it, but they were getting no contribution from their first round pick, or not much of a contribution. So probably their score is really depressed, unless of course they just like hit it out of the ballpark on every other draft pick that they made. So sometimes those low owned guys are already naturally situated on the teams they can help the most. So.
Right. And with the volatility at running back, like the top owned players, the top 10 is Mostert, Kamara, McCaffrey, Kyron, Etienne, Achane, Pacheco, White. I mean, all you need is some of those guys to bomb out, and then you're going to pass them. So that's kind of, those guys are probably up at the top of the board because they're the ones that got you there and have been very successful. So, and if we go back to the chart that I originally showed, the interesting thing was you didn't see guys of the top 10 finishers. I don't think any of them started. Let me look at that again, just to myself. So none of the top 10 finishers. Well, there was one that started in the top 10. Lou Brew started at 8 and finished. I'm sorry, started at 10 and finished 8th. Other than that, the top 10 finishers came from way down in the field. So there's just going to be turnover. So you can't be too, confident that if you start. No offense, Dan. I know like you're starting number 1 in NFFC, but just set expectations. Things could happen.
Yeah, well, I've definitely told myself that already. I mean, because it's you're starting, basically all those points I accumulated all the way along. When you start getting to like weeks 12, 13, 14, if you're up at the top, it's hard to fall down very far, and it's easier to move up as long as your team keeps playing well. You're just looking for other people to just kind of like the attrition to happen, but when when all of that just gets condensed down to basically one game's worth, when we take the average and we say, okay, you're starting with the average and then you're going to add week 15 to that, you don't have 14 weeks worth of average. You got 1 week worth of average, and if you bomb on week 15, probably done. It'd be very difficult to recover. So yeah, and that's all just to say, don't give up wherever you start out. If you're still in 700th place after week 16, yeah, you're probably done. But at least give it a try. Do what you can the first couple weeks, see where you can get, and then let the chips fall where they may in the last week.
You can only make up so much ground. Like I listened to like some of the Go Bills recap from last year, and they dropped 222 points. The 1 week that they went from 140, then moved up to first. So. I mean, I don't remember. I haven't scored 222 points, like I think ever in my life in an FFPC league. But if you pull that off in the spring, like that's what you have to have. You have to have like this over the top.
The nuts week. Yep.
Yeah. You need to have at least one of those, and then have every other week be at least very good, if not great.
Right.
The one other thing to call attention to, because I think it was a draft season dream. And it's actually they're next to each other. Derrick Henry and Tyjae Spears. We already talked about the Houston Texans schedule. So there's the opposite. The Titans get the Texans twice during the shootout. So if Derrick Henry continues his touchdown streak, if they keep dumping passes off to Spears, they could be really interesting. And last night they each had their own standalone value. And of course, if one of them gets hurt, the other one, probably becomes an absolute optimal play there in the shootout here. So I think that those teams are pretty happy that they got those guys through.
Good point. We've already talked a lot of wide receivers, but let's just real quick hit any wide receivers that are standing out to you, Andrew or Darren, as far as like guys you think could really vault people up the board.
Well, Jefferson's there.
3.97%.
So Jefferson, Chase is 4.9, and Kupp. Those would be my three. Christian Watson's like a deep sleeper. If he can come back, I don't know if he's like in line to play this week, but I mean, he's a boom or bust type of guy. Like he could do it if he comes back. So, but those are the guys.
Metcalf and Devonta Smith stick out to me too, 6% ish. Really interesting on that front. I think they could possibly pop, and then I think and again, don't want to steal your thunder, but I think there's potential for some of the rookies as well. One of those being Zay Flowers.
Yeah, those are a couple good ones, and we kind of obliquely already talked about it, but Cooper Kupp, is really starting to pick it up again, and if he has 3 Kupp-like games. And Matt Stafford is, like one of the ultimate distributors at quarterback. He's that classic point guard type of guy, and he's just going to get the ball out to the guys who are getting open. So, Kupp is a guy I would love to have, in on that team that is in 795th place. Unfortunately, I don't, but that's exactly the type of guy you're looking for if you're down there. All right, and I don't know if we lost Andrew or not, but we'll move on to tight ends, and hopefully Andrew will come back.
The La Quinta monster got him, I think.
I think so, right? Yeah, the waffle machine shorted out, and
I had to plug my computer in.
Gotcha. All right,
I'm alive.
We'll let you do it. So let's talk tight end real quick, because I think this is actually low-key one of the places where it's a little bit easier to differentiate and maybe get some legs up on the field, because my thought on tight end is it's one of those places where really bad defenses against a tight end really matter, and a lot of times really good defenses against tight end really matter. So it's one of those places where you might pay a little bit more attention to the matchup, and don't be afraid to come off of a chalk tight end if you've got a low-owned option with a really sweet matchup. Denver has been just terrible against the tight end. Cincinnati's another one, and so you can take a look and see, obviously with like Cincinnati, if you got Hawkinson and you're going up against Cincinnati this week, you don't want to come off that for anything. But if you've got let me see who Cincinnati plays even the next couple weeks. But if you've got a tight end who plays Cincinnati that's not very high owned, and you need to try to make up some ground on the field, like if you've got a perfect example might be Freiermuth, been pretty disappointing, but against Cincinnati, maybe he could get it done. So week 16, that might be the one place where you want to play Freiermuth. Any other thoughts on tight ends? Any low-owned tight ends you guys want to talk about, or any of that?
So, as far as tight ends, one of the things I do at the site is I do this deep dive into the top 5 finishing teams in the main event and Fantasy Pros / football guys from last year, and inevitably, there's like an overachieving tight end that shows up on these winning teams. So Tyler Higbee's a guy, Dalton Schultz was a guy, those types of players. So tight ends get in the hot streak, right? Like it's not like the high profile guys that suddenly just catch it. Cole Kmet was a guy, was another one last year.
Well, Darren, I'll add to, and there's I don't know how weird of a quirk it is, but we'll call it a weird quirk, right? Where only the top 4, the ones who make the league playoffs, are able to do adds and drops in weeks 13 and 14. So on your site, right, Brevin Jordan is top 5, top 3, and it's probably the quirk of he's so high owned because any of those 4 teams left would have been morons not to at least grab him or turn or dump somebody never to be picked up again and have Brevin Jordan on the bench. And so we're past the waiver period, but as you think about what you're saying, if Brevin Jordan catches fire, right, that's one of the ones who he popped late season, and he's on so many teams because he revealed himself, during the league playoffs where there was only a limited number of teams who could get him. So it's very likely a playoff team had him.
Right. And I think likely, looking at the waiver wires, I don't know if there was much turnover with Likely. Like, he was pretty popular during draft season, and then I think he was out there when Andrews got hurt, and a bunch of people picked him up. And I think he's on my list of guys to keep an eye on among those tight ends during the sprint that could really could pop.
Definitely makes sense because he's a guy who's working in that offense. Another example of that would be Evan Ingram. With Christian Kirk out, Ingram's gone bananas the past couple weeks, so that's something you don't really want to necessarily veer away from. If you're in a position where you've got Kittle and Ingram, probably you're going to want to play both of them. Depending on what else you've got to throw into your flex. But I would almost rather sit Kittle than sit Ingram at this point.
Yeah, I mean, he's probably right. I mean, we've seen his ceiling. Although Kittle historically has been a guy too, but the offense is not what it was 3 years ago when Kittle was smashing during the sprint. It's a little bit different. He's not the feature that he was back then. A couple other guys that I went down. Okonkwo, maybe. He could have a couple big games. Dawson Knox came back. Maybe he emerges. I put Freiermuth on there because he's 5% owned. Like, I don't trust the guy, but he had that one big game that, his first week back, so who knows? And I'm not sure if Waller's coming back yet or not. I think he's coming off IR.
Yeah, supposedly he's going to try to come back. So he was talking about week 15 was what he was targeting for his return. So, if that's the case, he should come off IR this week. Real quick, guys, let's hit Clarence Banks has a question for us. What about a tight end like Mcbride in a bad matchup? And this is almost pretty certainly talking about them against San Francisco this week, which is, San Francisco's not the greatest matchup for tight ends, but there are worse ones out there. But thoughts on Mcbride? Is there any reason you would ever sit Mcbride?
I mean, so on a KFFC team, I have McBride, Ferguson, and Joko, right? So in that situation, I would be sitting McBride, but he's probably doesn't have that wealth of riches. He's shown his upside. Mm-hmm. Like he can smash. So it depends what he needs. So if this is the first week of the playoffs, you're playing the guys with the highest ceiling, right? So I would sit him.
Roster dependent, I'm probably playing him. Even I'm not thinking about the matchup. I'm just thinking he's probably going to get target share. He's probably going to have, because his target share has been incredible. So and he looks good. So I'm firing him up. And again, as you said, Darren, your situation would certainly be an outlier positively for you, but I would say in most cases you're probably firing up McBride.
Yep, definitely. All right, in the last couple minutes, guys, let's talk a little bit about things you can do to maximize your chances, in what I call a static environment. Basically there are no more roster moves left. You can't make trades, you can't pick up or drop guys. Basically all that's left for you to do is decide who to start and who to sit, right? So how do we use what we have available to maximize our chances of success? I mean, I know we've talked about a lot of things, but any things that we haven't talked about, that you would give out there as advice to people going through this for the first time or maybe the 10th time. Andrew, let's start with you. You got any thoughts on the matter?
Qualitative thoughts. Go with your gut, right? You not to steal that from our guy G-Dub, right? But right, go with what you got. Nevertheless, go with your gut, right? You got here. Maybe you were lucky to get a couple teams in. Look, you probably have a good team. Generally, you're probably making good enough decisions on start sits. Be thoughtful, be mindful, set your lineup, and then try not to look at it, right? I mean, because I'm going to leave Mojo for the obvious thing of going through his leverage models and see who's out there, but stick with your first reaction. Set a lineup, walk away from it, maybe revisit it to make sure you got injuries, but your first reaction is probably your best reaction. Live with it, move on. Should be fun. Should be a fun shootout, but you can't agonize over start-sit decisions. I guess my last piece of advice is, can you possibly live with yourself if you sit a stud like Tyreek Hill? Just using an example here. So ask yourself, what play out the scenario of, okay, I sat Tyreek Hill and he went off, or I played him and he had a little bit of a dud. You would hate yourself forever if you lost so much ground on the field by sitting your stud, for sure. And I would let that rule the day, because I think that's ultimately the common sense answers that will do more good than harm over the course of your career.
Yep, definitely. And just on that note, I want to get back to something else, but first let's let Darren come up with anything that he's got here.
Well, I have my own process, and everybody has their own process. So what I've done for my teams is I print out the rosters, and in this case, I've written down like what the ownership is in the tournament for each of those guys. so that as I'm making start-sit decisions, I know what the exposure is to feed that into. So just to have all the information there. This is the money time. Have every data point available to you when you're doing that. And then don't get crazy with the leverage. Like don't be a hero. Like do it strategically. If this isn't like we said, this isn't the playoff tournament. We have 20 teams. If you're going to throw a Hail Mary, you probably got one shot to do it. And if it fails, then you're sunk. But just be thoughtful and use all the information that's available to you.
I love that idea of writing down the ownership percentages. I think that makes a lot of sense. That's not something I've done before, but you can bet it's something I'm going to start doing here. So, and then the other thing I think that's really important is to realize that once we get to these last weeks in the season, they play out a little bit differently than most of the other weeks as far as like just the cadence of the NFL games. I mean, most weeks it's, okay, we got a Thursday game, and then we got a huge batch of games on Sunday, then a Sunday night game and a Monday night game, right? But like in week 15, this week, we've got one Thursday night game, we've got 3 Saturday games, we've got on Sunday 7 early games, 3 late games, 1 Sunday night game, then we've got a Monday night game. So, things are spread out a little bit more, so they're happening a little bit slower. So you can take information that you have from those early games and use it, and do some late swaps if you think you need to. So, you want to have in mind, really before you get into the, even the Thursday game or certainly the Saturday game, okay, if certain things happen with the, these players that I have going early, is there anything else that I want to do to react to it? Did my stud disappoint on Saturday, and now I think I gotta maybe try to be a little bit more of a hero on Sunday, things like that. So, and week 16 and week 17 both have similar opportunities for us. Week 16 there's a Thursday game, 2 Saturday games. The Sunday games kind of split up as usual, and then 3 Monday games. Week 17, 1 Thursday, 1 Saturday, but then everything else is on Sunday. There's no Monday night. So things like that, I think, make a lot of sense to just be watching and see what you can do for it.
Be good to your families in week 16. It's Christmas.
Yes.
Don't you can always make up the points in week 17. Don't treat your families like shit.
Don't get scolded. Pick your spots.
Yes, definitely.
And watch out for that Cocktails and Dreams. He's got 35 teams in the main event championship bracket. Every year this guy does it.
Yeah, he's I don't know. I'm not sure what the max is on the main event. Is it 150 teams? It's got to be less than that, doesn't it? For an
I don't know.
event
I don't know
size.
how many he drafted. I could probably dig that up, but
Yeah,
I mean, still,
it's a lot.
Yeah.
For sure.
Oh,
now
All
you're
right.
going up against professionals.
Yes,
So act
exactly.
professionally yourself. Get to work. No one's going to hand it to you.
Yeah, but on the other hand, all it takes is one bullet. I mean, we've seen every year. It seems like you look across the different contests, in FFC, FFPC, underdog, all that kind of stuff. There's always somebody who's got 1 or 2 bullets in the gun, and that's it, and they win it all. So
Yeah, I mean, it's probably already predetermined that you're going to have certain players on your team to begin with, and we don't know who they are. But there's
That's it.
probably like a set of 100 teams that are even in the mix if we knew the results. And now you got to make the right decisions having those 100 teams. And that's
There you go. I agree with
what's
that.
going to happen.
I agree with
100%.
that. Well said.
Yep, exactly. All right. Well, we're going to let you guys get out of here, but just wanted to, real quick before we get out, Darren, if there's anything that you want to promo on the way out, feel free to do that. And then Andrew and myself, let's all give our Super Bowl teams, just to give a little thought to that.
Wow. All right. So on my end, if you've invested the money, like I said, you probably want to leverage our site at this point. Subscriptions are good for a year, so you're going to be covered all the way up until this time next year. Draft season's even a better utilization. virtual tour on the front page, covers everything on the site. You can go to, there's a deep dive for the championship round that is also there that you can go and get a sneak peek of stuff too. So just go and check it out.
All right, sounds good. Any thoughts on Super Bowl teams?
As much as I hate to say it, I'm liking the 49ers, that Muzio guy, but maybe he gets his wish this year.
Could be. Anybody from the AFC side? Who do you think will be the AFC rep?
Wow.
Too close to call.
You kind of think that the NFL wants the Chiefs to get back there, right? Just whether one way or the other, it seems to happen.
Yeah, could be. All right, Andrew. Super Bowl teams. Anything else you want to cover?
Cowboys, Jags. Jags win a nail biter.
Definitely not talking with your heart there at all.
No. Purely lost.
Peterson's won before. Peterson lost the resume.
Hey, chip in a chair. They just got to get in.
Yep. There you go. I'm going with a repeat of the what was it, like the 20? It was the Super Bowl where the lights went out. I'm going with San Francisco
Niners?
and the Ravens.
Okay.
Yep. And,
Harbaugh Bowl.
What's that?
The Harbaugh Bowl, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. So and I think San Francisco takes it. They look too darn good.
Yep.
All right, so thanks everybody for coming on. Make sure, if you haven't done so before, smash that like, because remember, you like us, we'll like you. It just works that way. Make sure you're also subscribing to the Goat District YouTube and podcast. If you go to YouTube and type in Goat District, you're going to find our other feed there. Make sure you're subscribing to that. And this week on Thursday, we'll have the tailgate like we do every week. It's going to be JD, Harry Snowman, maybe myself, going through and just looking at all the betting opportunities and start sits and everything else from that Thursday night game. And it's going to be a real barn burner, let me tell you. It's we've got Vegas and the Chargers, just awful. But anyway, the show will be better than the game probably. So make sure you check that out as well. And again, thanks everybody for listening. We'll check you all later.
Go district, the Pope listens. Dynasty, our religion, for the blokes missing. On all of these trades, on all of these plays, on all of these grades. By the end of the day, y'all getting played. So, what you gonna do next? Try to fill up that flex? Send the homie a text. That trash offer's the best. You try to make it complex, then they text you back. Now all of a sudden they don't make any sense. Broaden your horizons, boy. Dynasty's not for the Simons, boy. These trades not for consignment, boy. Respect your opponent, y'all some piranhas, boy. This my advice, from me to you. Open up your cute little podcast queue. Search up GOAT District, my dude. Pop it in your ear, man, y'all know what to do. It's the... And I always be traded. And I always be traded. And I always be trading. Y'all try to betray them, but first you gotta bait them. Fish.